Joining me now, she will take on Diana Silva, Bellator 279, finally getting back inside the cage and in Hawaii, which is pretty damn cool. Janay Harding joins the show. Janay, thanks for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Now, I spoke to you prior to, or following your last fight. Didn't go your way. Then a bit of a hiatus. You wearing glasses now? Um, Eye surgery, a whole bunch of stuff went on. I want to talk through the process a little bit before we get to the fight. Just how did this all come about? Like, how did you figure out that you even needed to go in for the surgery prior to the surgery? Like, what was the diagnosis going into this?
Yeah, so I was out in San Diego. I was obviously training quite a bit. And then just after one of the boxing sparring days, I realized that there was sort of like a little, what they call a shadow, which is basically like a bug on the windscreen kind of thing, like a little mark on the inner like corner of my eye, of my left eye. Obviously, I was a little bit concerned about it, but I was out in San Diego, so and I was planning on going home for Christmas, so I thought I'd wait to get it checked out when I got back to Australia. Obviously, I'm a little bit more familiar with our medical system, so when I did get it checked out, it was pretty much like he said you have to go get surgery like today or tomorrow. So, yeah, they treat it like an emergency because it is a detached retina, and I basically rocked up to the hospital 2 days later, and I got there at 9 a.m. I was in surgery by 5 p.m. So yeah, so I got emergency detached retina surgery.
Wow. And so when you found this out, obviously, what you were like freaked out, I'm sure, because seeing spots, whatever it was, and you say emergency surgery. What would have, like, timeline wise, what would have happened if you hadn't gotten the emergency surgery right away?
So, basically, like the best way to explain it is a retina is like kind of like a wallpaper. So, if you get a tear in that wallpaper, the fluid from your eye ends up getting out underneath the wallpaper and sort of tearing it off the wall, basically. So, um, since I'm younger, when you are younger, your fluid is a little bit more solid, whereas when you are older, it's a lot more liquefied, which means that process is going to happen a little bit faster. Whereas, lucky for me, it was going quite slow. But if it had continued to basically completely detach, then it would have got to my macula, which is honestly like this tiny little divot in your eye, but that macula sends the image to your brain. So if it had detached all the way through to the macula, basically I would have just seen black, and there would have been no recovery from that. They can't really repair it once it has detached all the way off. So that's why they treat it like an emergency, and that's why they try to get it before it hits the macula.
Makes sense. Now, was there any
Mm.
thought going through your head when you heard, emergency detached retina, that fighting wouldn't happen again?
Yeah, absolutely. That was my first fear. I think it's like, I think every fighter would say that that's their like biggest fear on anything. Like if you roll your ankle, you're like,
Of
oh,
course,
can I
yeah.
fight again, kind of thing. Like, so that's, yeah, that was definitely the first thing that went through my brain. Luckily, I was sort of just trying to keep calm, and it all kind of happened so quickly that it was sort of, I didn't even really had time to process it. Like I just
Of
kind of
course.
had to. I was literally coming from Sydney. Like I went from San Diego. I landed in Sydney. This was still during like all the restrictions that were going on in the pandemic. The borders were closed. I had to cross the border from Sydney, which is in New South Wales, to Queensland, to the Gold Coast, which is my home, so that I could spend my Christmas with my family. And therefore, I decided that it would be best to go get the surgery in Queensland as well. So I was literally just sort of concentrating on just like crossing the border, making sure I went to the right place, booking it, and figuring out what day it would mean, how many like days I would spend in the hospital and that kind of stuff, and just sort of taking it as it came. And then I guess like finding out more information and asking all the questions as I was in the hospital and speaking to the doctors and the surgeons and everything like that. At the end of the day, I knew that this surgery was sort of like a priority, so getting that done was number one, and then I guess looking at how it was going to affect my fighting was kind of second.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, health comes first for sure.
Mm.
And you said it was during, obviously quarantine and the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. When we spoke before, flying home was not as tedious as it was prior to the last fight, but like because prior to that there was that whole lottery system and all that stuff. Correct? This had none of
Well,
that.
That was for New Zealand,
Yeah,
but there
not
was
Australia.
still the hotel quarantine, which was like the 2 weeks in hotel
Yes.
quarantine, which is insane. Obviously, nobody has 2 weeks to sit in a hotel, and I mean, I think we've done an interview when I was in quarantine as well,
Yes.
and it's just like you're literally sitting there doing nothing. One of my hotel quarantines was kind of okay. Because we got a balcony and everything like that, but then the second one, I didn't even get a window that opened. Like
Yeah.
it's insane, and I think we're going to look back on this time and be like, the fact that we let that happen was crazy. But lucky enough, when I got back in December, hotel quarantine was done. So, well, to vaccinated travelers and that kind of thing, and things had definitely eased up in the way of restrictions and everything, so that kind of helped, and it made it a little bit of an easier process landing straight into Sydney. I couldn't land directly into Queensland. That was kind of why I landed in Sydney, because Queensland you still had to quarantine, but New South Wales and Victoria didn't, and but now all of them are open. It was like it was such a crazy time, and things were rapidly changing like every week.
Still are, which is insane. Almost 3 years
Yeah,
later.
right.
So you know you're so active on social media. It was a little hidden initially when you got the eye surgery done. Like you didn't post a ton, and then it sort of just popped up there that you got this done. What was the reaction from like your fans and your friends and all this stuff on social media?
Yeah, I mean, during the actual process, I was posting on. Obviously, I have a close friends because I have friends and family on there, and I only have one account. That's the same Instagram account that I've had since I was like 17 or something.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty crazy of what it is now. But I guess like my friends and family kind of knew, and obviously those people that spent Christmas with me, I had an eye patch on and everything, and there was certain things that I couldn't do, like I couldn't drive and all sorts of stuff like that. So some people already kind of knew, and then I kind of, I guess like I'm saying, it took me a while to process it all, and I kind of realized that this is going to be something that I'm going to have to, like, I'm going to start wearing glasses, so people are going to realize something
Yeah.
happened. And then so I was like, I might as well sort of at least share it. And again, like that beauty of social media is that you can use your platform to help other people that are maybe going through the same thing. And luckily enough, when I did share it, there was a couple of people that had actually gone through a very similar thing, or in the past had unfortunately surgeries that weren't successful, and couldn't even do something as similar as, like, I guess as minute as jiu-jitsu, in a sense. Like, I'm thinking, will I ever fight again? Where there's some people who can't even do jiu-jitsu anymore
Yeah.
because they have had a detached retina, and then their surgeries weren't successful, or for whatever reason. Everyone's obviously in a different situation, but yeah, I mean, in a general sense, the reaction from everyone, I again, like, was taking it in my stride, just trying to process it, and I was slowly coming to terms with the fact that it was a big deal. I was just like, okay, like, it is eyesight. Obviously, I knew it was a big deal, but I guess once I had the reaction of everyone else, I was like, oh, this is a very big deal, and people are treating it accordingly. And it was kind of good to know, because it was obviously scary, a very traumatic sort of experience. But at the end of the day, I popped out the other end, and hopefully, my story, in a sense, or understanding of it, can help other people too.
Of course. Now, obviously, this fight's lined up. You had the surgery. You said in December, Christmas time. What did they say originally? The recovery process and time was going to be like. Was this the time frame that you had expected to have this fight this soon after the surgery?
I mean, not necessarily. The weird thing was that we were kind of playing it by ear. I think, sort of, again, it is dependent on how well your surgery goes, what kind of situation you had, how long you left it. I have very good genetics in the way of healing. I'm very lucky in that sense. So I think I probably had, maybe not best case scenario, because we did have some complications, but that second lot, weirdly, the complications almost ended up giving me added security, because we ended up doing some extra stuff to the eye to kind of support me even more so to be able to fight. And the other lucky thing was I had a fantastic surgeon, um, and he basically worked with me. I feel like a lot of people in the medical industry look down on fighting. Obviously, it's very dangerous. Obviously, it has a lot of repercussions and a lot of negative kind of health repercussions and that kind of thing. So a lot of the time they just have a one kind of sided answer of you should stop fighting.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, I think he understood that this wasn't like it's not a hobby for me. It's not just something that I do on the side. This is my career and this is my livelihood, and so therefore I will do anything to get myself back to the cage and back to fighting actively. So lucky he worked with me on that front, made sure that he um, did my buckle that I've got in, which is basically like a silicon rubber band, quite proud, quite tight. We did like 12 to 6 laser. So yeah, everything's sort of like leaps and bounds above supported. So it'd be very difficult for it to sort of go back, I guess, or if lightning strikes twice, I'm extremely unlucky. But for that reason, I think I had a good case in the sense that we got me back, and then I just worked with him. I will still have to get some stuff done to it, but basically, we're just working together. Like, I think that's the best way to explain it. Like, we're just working together, and I'm looking at fighting at the end of April, and he was like, okay, cool, I'm happy with you doing that, but we might have to do this. And I'm like, well, can we do it after the fight? And he was like, yes. So
Nice.
we're literally just working together, and I go see him often to make sure that we're checking, because obviously it's an eye, so it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it, when the retina detaches, it's not like it really hurt. I mean, you can get high pressure and headaches and signs and stuff, but you can't really see what's going on inside. So you really have to go get your eye dilated and get them to look inside and get them to check your retina and everything like that. So doing that regularly, I think, has definitely helped to make sure that we keep on track, and that I can still sort of work in between fighting now, maybe taking another short break, then fighting again, and yeah, working around it like that.
I mean, we've seen guys like Michael Bisping fight with one eye. Basically, he used Jason Perillo as a guy. I heard that on Joe Rogan's show where he was like, they were doing my eye exam and Perillo would cough once to tell me that I got it right or something like that. So we see guys able to do it these days.
Absolutely. The crazy thing is, on my flight over here, the Bisbing documentary was on the plane. So I thought, what better sign from the universe to say, watch this. I've been meaning to watch it for a while, but obviously I've been crazy busy. And I watched it, and again, like a motivation in itself, just knowing what he went through. And it was very similar to my story. Again, like him having to sort of go in for a second lot of procedures and that kind of thing. It was just interesting to know, and interesting to know somebody else has been through it, and someone that I've met and kind of know through the Ruka family and stuff too. So it was, it's kind of cool mentally just to have that on my mind, knowing that I can kind of persevere forward and hopefully have a longevity in the sport.
For sure. Now, before we get to your last fight, Leah McCourt, we spoke about that fight itself. She's had fights since. She won one. Or, no, yes, she won one, and then she lost to Sinead Kavanagh, who you've beaten. So it's like MMA math never works. What were your thoughts on that fight when you watched it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great fight too between both girls, especially like Sinead's just toughness, general toughness, persevering through that knee injury, and working on the ground as well, and getting Leah in a Kimura and like submissions and stuff like that. Just being offensive on the ground and stuff that we probably haven't seen from Sinead. I think that's the crazy thing about MMA too, is that from one fight to the next, we're all kind of different people depending on how much you've spent on your craft and developing. You can sort of like, fill in those gaps pretty quickly, and like you're saying, MMA math never works. And
yeah.
I've lost to Leah, she's lost to Sinead, I've beaten Sinead, and then you add Arlene in there, and then other people, it just doesn't make any sense. We all fought each other and maybe lost or won, but so that I guess also makes for exciting matchups and hopefully rematches as well.
100%. And judging by the rankings, I mean, it's all over the place no matter when you look at it. One goes up, one goes down. You're still on the rankings even after this last performance, and you're fighting Deanna Silva, who's ranked at number 10. Is this where you thought you would line up with someone coming into this matchup, or were you offered other names? Like, talk to me about the process in signing this fight and then moving forward with it.
I mean, I was somewhat expecting like Jessica Borger, who was the person that you said Leah won against straight after me. So, because that sort of made sense a little bit too. But this was the only name that I was offered. I also you kind of look at everyone else who's already matched or active or just fought or is possibly injured or I've already fought or that kind of thing. So it's sort of it makes sense, I think. Also, Diana coming off two losses, but two losses to two really formidable opponents like Arlene and Julia. So it kind of all. I think this is a good matchup. Still, it still gets me excited. I still get to test my skills, and it's still like a great opponent for me to come up against after a short layoff.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you know about her? Have you watched those previous performances? Like, are you one that wants to watch tape on her, or are you more so focused on yourself?
Yeah, I don't really overdo it, but I guess when I get the name, I do quickly just get an understanding of what I'm like up against in a sense, and what to expect. But I kind of don't overdo it. I know a lot of people sort of like overanalyze it. I kind of leave that up to my coaches and what they want to do, based on what they see, is sort of cool with me. But for the most part, I like to stick to what I'm good at, and I think that always ends up translating really well in performances. If you just stick to your general strengths, then you should come out with a great performance.
For sure, and we know striking is obviously your bread and butter. Prove that. Even in your last fight, when it didn't go your way, as we said, is the plan to stay on the feet as much as possible? Then,
Well, I think that she would kind of want it there. She is a bit of a gamer, and most of her fights end up being predominantly on the feet. So, if I mean, I personally would like to keep it there, and I would like to show off some even more improved striking. I had a lot of success in that last fight, but I do feel like there was still holes and things that I could have done, or I am a better striker than what I kind of showed in that last fight. I think I kind of fell into some not necessarily habits, but I wasn't necessarily threatened by the striking from Leah, so that made me a little bit messier than I would have liked to have looked. So to maybe tidy that up, look a little bit like cleaner, and to show somewhat more of a clinic would be great. But at the same time, I'm also like happy with going elsewhere, or holding it in other positions. So I'm always like one of those people who doesn't try hold on to the idea that it's all going to be striking
yeah.
or it's all going to be whatever, just in case it doesn't stay there. But for the most part, I'd like it to stay on the feet.
You're in San Diego now. Was the plan always to come to California for the full camp?
It was to come for as much as I could, but unfortunately, like the eye, so everything sort of rolled into one thing into the other. The eye surgery meant that my visa had expired. Like I had already actually booked my flight back to San Diego, and then my second lot of procedures ended up meaning that my I had to cancel my flight back because they had ended up putting gas in my eyeball, and I wasn't cleared to fight. So then, to fly, sorry. And so then I had to renew my visa. Whereas if I had come over just before that, I could have extended my visa, which would have been a lesser sort of procedure. Whereas I had to renew it, and that took longer, and therefore I could only really do the last couple of weeks over here. But I kind of am happy with how it ended up working out. I had a fantastic start of my camp in the Gold Coast in Australia at CMBT Training Center, and the boys were fantastic in facilitating everything I needed. And I actually ended up having everything basically under the one roof, between CMBT and Platinum Boxing. I wasn't really traveling around much, which I really enjoy. Um, and then just finishing off the last couple of weeks here with the girls, getting those looks, getting those training partners, and also getting acclimatized and getting the travel out of the way, I think worked out really, really well.
Yeah, judging by your social media, the girls that you're training with right now, absolute beasts.
Mm.
Tell me about some of the main training partners that you're working with for this camp, and do any of them really emulate your opponent?
I think everyone sort of has a little bit of a different look. Not a lot of them emulate my opponent, but some of them are around about the same size and do similar things, which is good for me. But I think as well, like with MMA, can never really be too grasped on one opponent too, because like honestly, you could get a last minute replacement as well. So, like I sort of said, like I just like sticking to what I'm good at. Keep developing the concepts that I've been working on that works towards her sort of style, but at the same time, just enjoying training with these different looks. Like, I'm out here, obviously, very good friends with Alima, getting to share the same club with her. Then I've got training partners like Angela Hill, Jenna Bishop, Jessica Panay, Tina, Tyler. There's all sorts of girls out here. Juliana. It's fantastic, and that's like in itself. I mean, when you go from like Angela Hill to like Juliana, it's just sort of like shows you got jiu-jitsu and striking and both pioneers in each of their avenues, which is fantastic for me because then I get to basically just osmosis as much of their knowledge and I guess experience as I can. So it's fantastic being out here and enjoying all the training.
And you're going to have to make the trip right back, obviously, as you said, to Australia for the eye. So you said a little break following this fight. Let's move away from the fight. Do you think you will get another shot in 2022 inside the cage, or would you like to take the rest of the year off?
I mean, I'm hoping to stay as active as I possibly can. That'll all be dependent on how this next surgery goes and what that means. I like the I guess not cool, but I guess positive thing about eyes is that they seem to be quick turnarounds. They're obviously pretty crazy at the beginning, and getting needles in your eye is, I can tell you right now, not super comfortable. But
Yeah.
this next surgery should be something that my surgeon has done a lot. And again, like, I can't praise him enough. Dr. Tran has been like phenomenal, and he's like a very well experienced ophthalmologist that has also worked over here in like around the Bay Area in LA and a little bit of San Diego as well. So he's had a lot of experience, and for that reason I can kind of wholeheartedly trust that he will do the best job possible. And hopefully that also means that I have the least amount of like kind of recovery and that sort of stuff. So if I can turn around one or two more fights in 2022, that would be fantastic. Make up for lost time. I would love that, but at least one more at the very minimum, I would see myself doing.
The first interview we had, we talked a lot of mindset, mentality. You know, you opened up quite a bit and were very uh, candid with the mindset kind of stuff, and I appreciated that. And so with this, you had time off. Obviously, lots of stuff running through your head and whatnot. What were you able to do to stay grounded during this, and what really did go on in that head of yours?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. I think I've gone through less and had a worse mentality about it. Whereas this was such a big deal, but for whatever reason, I think my faith in the final destination never really wavered, which was something that I was proud of myself for. I don't know if it was where I'm at in maturity of like myself as a person or as an athlete, but I kind of just like kept the faith. There's sort of no better way to put it, but I kept the faith that I would continue to fight. I would continue to, that none of my sacrifices that I made up until this point would go unjustified or go to waste, and that I would still end up fighting. And I guess through that mentality, I manifested a fantastic surgeon that worked with me. I'm back matched up. I'm fighting next week. All of these things are happening on like a fantastic card and a fantastic opportunity. So I think I can't really pinpoint what it was that kept me there, but I do think it's just like everything that's happened up into my life, up until now in my life, has sort of, I guess, prepared me for understanding that life is peaks and valleys, and this is just another hiccup in the journey, and there's nothing that I can't handle. And I think obviously the idea that now I need glasses, I can't see very well out of that left eye, I'm super nearsighted, is intimidating. It was crazy, but I was also just sort of like, I've been doing this for a long time, and the human body is a crazy, amazing thing, and I've never got any surgeries up until now. I've been very
Mm-hmm.
lucky with injuries. So here we are with just a little bit of adversity. Like, a lot of people have it much worse, and I'm sure I will adjust and get back to doing what I do best. And it only took a couple of weeks to get used to the depth perception. I can still see shapes and colors and stuff out of it, and I still have a great right eye. So that's all I need. Like, I'll be a world champion on my worst day, and I know that all the sacrifice I made will be for that exact reason, and I'll just be able to tell my story eventually. So I think maybe that's what I kept in mind.
Would you say you're coming out of this the strongest Janay Harding you've been?
I think so, and probably the most motivated. I would definitely say, like, now it's almost like I have sacrificed a lot for this journey, and now I've even sacrificed my eyesight. I've sacrificed like chipped teeth. I've sacrificed obviously money and being home with my family and missing out on like watching my friends' kids grow up and my mum's birthdays and Mother's Days and all sorts of stuff. And I've leaped around the world, and now I've, just to top it off, sacrificed my eyesight. It's going to be hard to stop me, like with that kind of mentality and those things behind me and those motivations, it's going to be really hard. So I think this is definitely the strongest and most motivated, Janay.
I was going to ask another question, but how the hell can I do that after that answer? Janay, thank you so much for your time. If you have any shout outs, sponsors, thank yous, whoever, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to keep saying thank you to everyone that's helped me during this camp, all my friends and family at home. Being home was amazing, but CMBT Training Center and Platinum Boxing, you guys have done the most to make sure I'm super prepped for this fight. And everyone in San Diego, 10th Planet San Diego, Alianza Jiu Jitsu, and Azteca Boxing, all my coaches and training partners, and everyone like that, big thank you and big love.
Thanks a lot, Janay. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.